근데 심장이 어떻게 생긴 줄 알고?
보면 알겠지.
The best thing about free-to-play games is that you don't really need to watch or read a review. You can go try it out yourself because they are free. But even free-to-play games ask you to invest something far more valuable than money to play them, and that is your time. So it might still be worth it to look at the reception to a game before you decide to invest time in it, especially in a long-term title like the first Descendant. Initially, I was going to play this for a good 3 to 4 hours and then put up an early impressions video, but I barely made it past 1 hour before realizing that this game isn't really for me. That doesn't mean it's a bad game, of course, it just means I'm not part of the game's target audience. If you're not going to watch the entire video, here's a summary. This game is technically a really good product, it looks great, all the systems work well with each other, and there is enough depth to keep you playing for a long time. But what may turn you off, like it did in my case, is the mediocre gameplay, heavy focus on monetization, and most important of all, the mere thought of investing multiple years in a new live service title seems exhausting. If you're someone who is eager to find a game to adopt as your main game for several years, then sure, this title may be worth a look. Even then, I would suggest to be a bit cautious because free-to-play projects are more likely to be shut down if they don't get a good reception in their first few months on the market. Okay, with that said, let me get into the details. There are timestamps for the different sections of the video if you want to know about any particular aspect of the game. Let's begin with the visuals, because that's what has likely attracted a lot of people to this game in the first place. Built on Unreal Engine 5 and developed by Nexon Games, a veteran studio from South Korea, the first Descendant impressed audiences with its stunning visuals in the trailers. It mostly lives up to that promise as the game does look good, but I would say it falls a bit short in standing out from the rest of the games on the market. Games built on Unreal Engine have a sort of a default look, the kind that you get to see in other games like Palworld. It looks nice, but it takes a lot of effort for a developer to add their own artistic touch to make the game seem different. For example, Fortnite, the poster child of Unreal Engine, has a unique look that immediately distinguishes it from other games. The first Descendant looks nice, but also looks a lot like a default Unreal Engine game. I suspect a lot of work went into making sure that all the systems behind the game worked well, and they do, but the visuals seem to play it a bit safe, making it look like a generic shooter. I played on a PS5 and opted to prioritize performance, which dialed down the visuals a bit, but the game still struggled to maintain a steady frame rate, making the gameplay experience a bit janky. Nothing pulls you out of a game faster than an unsteady frame rate because the immersion is broken. I only played for an hour, but I experienced a crash as well. And if your game is crashing on a console, well, that sadly means the optimization part of the game still has work left to be done. Issues like these are usually expected to be fixed later, but they certainly spoiled the launch day experience. Speaking of launch day experience, I was happy to note that there were no login queues or any server issues of any kind. I was able to get into the game immediately at launch and start playing, which is a somewhat rare experience for an online title these days. However, when I later checked the Steam reviews and discussions on Reddit, I noticed that the people who wanted to buy the Battle Pass or just the virtual currency did have some launch day issues because their purchases were not being credited to their accounts.
나는 모든 것을 보았어요. 두 세계의 연결을
Next, let's talk about the story. I'm not sure how many people were actually expecting something positive in this section, but the most positive thing I can say about the story is that it exists. There are actual characters, each with a distinct set of personalities, and that's pretty much it. If you have played other looter shooter titles over the years, you already know how the story goes. Humanity faces a great threat from an alien force, and the player character is a superhero who is granted magical powers from mysterious force, and you now have to use those powers to go fight the great evil. Over the years, we have taken up the roles of Tenno, Guardians, Freelancers, Agents, Avengers, Outriders, Wayfinders, and now it's the turn of the Descendants. The names of the heroes might change, but the story is essentially the same. And I think most people are okay with this. Looter shooters are not always known for their stories, although Warframe and Destiny do stand out from the crowd by a wide margin. Coming back to this game, the kindest thing I can say about the story is that the production values are excellent. There are these high quality cutscenes that try to ease you into the world, and a lot of characters who try to explain to you what's going on, although they all seem a bit bored while doing it. Since I didn't really spend a lot of time on the game, I may not be the best person to talk about the story, but I will say that it doesn't really get off to a good start. The gameplay is what's going to decide the fate of this game. After all, a looter shooter expects you to play the same missions over and over with the hope of getting the loot you want. So the core gameplay loop better be good, right? This game takes inspiration from a lot of other sources, but the one that seems to have impacted it the most is Warframe. The core gameplay loop of both games is incredibly similar. You have different heroes to choose from, each of whom has 4 abilities along with a passive ability. You can wield 3 weapons, and you need mods to keep improving your build and survive in higher level content. This game doesn't have the bullet jump traversal system from Warframe, but it replaces it with a grappling hook which works in a way similar to the one we saw in Halo Infinite. It's not nearly as smooth though, and I found traversal to be a bit slow in general, especially when compared to Warframe. At least part of the game's main objective is to unlock more Descendants as you proceed through the story. Each Descendant can either be unlocked by playing various missions and finding components, or be purchased with virtual currency called Caliber, and at the moment the only way to get Caliber is by purchasing it with real money. We'll discuss more about that in the monetization section. The game has a large enough map, although most of it is locked in the beginning, and it appears that you unlock each section as the story goes along, which is expected. Each section of the map seems to be independent, meaning this is not one big open world area. In the part of the game that I played, starting new missions was seamless with no loading screens. As soon as you loaded into a section of the map, you could walk up to a mission marker and the mission would start right away, which felt nice. The game also shows you an estimated time to beat the mission, which is a nice touch. This information will no doubt be useful in the later stages of the game, where you need to replay missions, and knowing how long it may take you to finish a mission will help you prioritize your time. The actual combat mechanics felt a bit average, which I suspect is a side effect of the slow traversal system. If you move fast in a game, the combat also feels fast and fluid. But here, apart from grappling a few feet ahead of you, the game essentially asks you to stay still and fight, which isn't a great experience. Just to make sure I wasn't playing it wrong, I watched a few streamers play the game, and they seemed to be doing the same thing. They were much better at me than using the grappling hook, but when actually fighting the enemies, they stood still. The ability cooldowns seem fair, but since I didn't play long enough to try other characters, I can't speak much about that aspect of the gameplay. The mod system works almost exactly like Warframe, although the user interface seems to be just slightly a bit more friendlier for new players. The mastery rank system from Warframe makes an appearance here as well, with each rank granting you certain benefits that will help you progress faster in the game. It also encourages you to try different characters and weapons. It's always been a good system, and it works well here too. Apart from that, the gameplay systems built into this title are really well thought of, and if you like farming for different sorts of loot, then the first Descendant has you covered. A quick mention about the audio department. The music in the game is nothing much to speak about, as it never really made its presence felt. The sound effects on the weapons and abilities felt a bit dull and weightless, but again, that might just be the early game experience, and the higher rarity loot that drops later may have something different. The voice acting is quite extensive. The characters in this game like to talk a lot, and they talk all the time.
안내자와 대화하던 게 너였을 줄이야. 바로 사령부로 오고 있는 줄 알았는데. 우선 힘든 임무로 고생 많았다. 가래를 직접 나타나다니.
I noticed later on Reddit that there's an option to turn off some of the chatter, so that might be worth a look. But at the end of the day, excessive voiced dialogue is probably better than no voiced dialogue at all. I guess that's up to individual preference. Alright, now let's talk about the part of the game that made me quit after just 1 hour. The monetization model. For a game that is so heavily inspired by Warframe, it does not currently have one feature that makes Warframe great, allowing players to trade virtual currency. It might be added later on, who knows, but at the moment, this is a game almost exactly like Warframe, but with no option to trade currency with other players. And that means your progress is blocked at nearly every corner, where you have to either spend a lot of your time or spend a lot of your money to avoid spending time. The game allows you to purchase a long list of items that can help you progress faster in the game. The main characters, or descendants, are all purchasable with premium currency, but using the oldest trick in the book, the game doesn't actually allow you to get the exact amount required to purchase each character. Instead, you have to buy a higher bundle of caliber so that you have some currency left over, and then feel motivated to buy some more just to spend the remaining currency. The ultimate descendants, which are the equivalent of prime warframes, are currently priced at $70, which is the price of a full AAA game. One might argue that Warframe sells prime warframe bundles at $80 and more, but again, that game has an alternate way to acquire everything for free, including the prime warframes, by simply trading with other players. You can also buy various boosters which are meant to save you time, but this is another old trick. All it means is that the game is designed to progress at a certain speed, and you're forced to progress at half the speed by default unless you pay up to progress at the intended rate. On top of selling individual items, the game also features a battle pass because it is 2024 and all free-to-play games must have a seasonal model that includes a new battle pass every couple of months. It's got the usual things, a free track and a paid track mixed in, so that as you keep playing, you see all these rewards that you supposedly earned but are locked behind a paywall, and that motivates you to buy the battle pass to unlock the rewards. I'm not saying Nexon is the only company that does this, but at this point, I'm just tired of seeing this model being used as the base to build a game, and every large developer who supports this model will only prolong its usage. The only thing that you can do as a player who doesn't like this model is walk away, and that's what I did. What was initially a plan to play the game for 3 to 4 hours turned into around 1 hour of gameplay, and I was done. I can see that this game has depth. I kept seeing these huge bosses on various streams, and I am happy that the game seems to be off to a good start, but after spending 7 years with other live service games, I just don't have the stamina to get invested in yet another one from the beginning right now. If you're thinking of giving this game a try, then by all means go ahead, it's a free title. But do keep a close eye on how much time and money you're thinking of investing in it, because this game uses a tried and tested business model that is designed to lure you in with an addictive gameplay loop and then try to extract as much time and or money from you as possible. Thanks for watching.